Hello, people. Catchadogger here to ask one simple question. Can Loader4, the starter AC, attain the certification of Stargazer? If you don't know, Stargazer is when you finish every mission in the game, not including the arena fights. I'll be covering missions or fights that Loader4 on paper struggles with, and will skip the easy ones for obvious reasons. If you wish to see the easy missions or the arena fights, I have two videos on my channel that will cover those. For now, let's get to the real stuff. C4621 crash lands on Rubicon 3 with an AC provided by Walter, Loader4, a light to midweight AC that comes equipped with an assault rifle, a 4-cell missile launcher, and a pulse blade. The internals of the AC aren't all that great, having very mediocre EN supply and speed. This means that the run requires plenty of management, but luckily it isn't too extreme. What Loader4 really lacks in is the offensive capabilities. The two ranged weapons are essentially just chip damage, which leaves us having to deal majority of our damage up front with the pulse blade. Due to the nature of the pulse blade, however, it is actually one of the strongest weapons in the game, having decent DPS, impact buildup, and the ability to cancel out of most of its swings if you have enough energy to quick boost. The main purpose of the pulse blade here, though, is not the damage it deals, but rather the stagger it applies when you do a charged hit, and the impact it'll leave on an enemy after that. With the stage set, let's begin our torturous run of AC6. The first real encounter on Rubicon 3 is on Operation Wall Climber, against the Juggernaut. The Juggernaut is a heavy weapons platform that is completely armored in the front, forcing the player to always have to get to its back to deal damage. The first half of the fight is relatively easy, as Rusty will hold the aggro of the Juggernaut as long as he is on the map. For the later half though, the Juggernaut will always attempt to keep distance from you and boost away from you when you finally get near its back. This makes it a game of cat and mouse. With the proper use of assault boosts, Loader4 has no problems keeping up with the rear end of the Juggernaut, and the fight is overall pretty easy and simple. With the Juggernaut destroyed, we fast forward a bit to Watchpoint Alpha, where we had to fight against Sula. Sula's AC comes equipped with a pulse gun, a detonating bazooka, a javelin, and 4 plasma missiles, making his AC have a lot of chip damage. Now, Sula himself as an opponent isn't actually that hard, as his AI does not play aggressively enough to really threaten you at any time. Now that we have killed Sula, we're gonna move on to the next fight. So here's Balteus, a giant autonomous craft that has a variety of heavy weapons and a pulse shield to deal with the enemies of the PCA. This is just my personal opinion, but Balteus also isn't hard even when we talk about its pre-nerfed version. The reason being is that Balteus is a really slow boss with extremely telegraphed moves that are just readable like a book. If you know the tells, Balteus should be 95% chip damage, with the occasional 5% being heavy damage from just a bit of player mismanagement. The pulse shield isn't really a problem either, as the pulse blade can easily deal with it. As Balteus is extremely weak to energy and explosive damage, the idea is to get the pulse shield down and then punish as much as you can with the blade or your missiles whenever Balteus is stuck in a heavy and long-winded animation. After Balteus, we infiltrate Grid 086 and have to deal with Carla's Smart Cleaner. The Smart Cleaner is similar to the Juggernaut, being heavily armored and having a specific weak point the player must chase after. The difference between the two is that the Cleaner is heavily armored everywhere except for its intake located on the rear top end, and the faceplate, which is really hard to hit consistently. While the Juggernaut was relatively easy and simple, the Cleaner that is located in Grid 086 requires a bit of management due to a few reasons. The weak point of the Cleaner occasionally spews out molten rocks that can deal a chunk of damage to you, so you have to avoid these from time to time. The next reason is the room that the Cleaner is in. There is very little space and the ceiling prevents you from going high enough to avoid the Cleaner reliably, forcing you to have to use more energy than needed to just simply float in place. The fight really is just about being absolutely patient, as the Cleaner isn't really a threat due to how slow it is. After the Cleaner, we move on to Ocean Crossing. So Ocean Crossing isn't just a boss fight, but really the entire mission. The first portion here with the satellite cannons can be mostly avoided due to the way Grid 086 is designed, having areas that you can go under to get cover for most of it. There is one segment here though, where you expose yourself to the lasers after this bridge ends abruptly. While it might seem like Loader4 doesn't have enough capacity to go through this portion, it actually has enough. And on paper, while this might be a problem, In practice, it isn't. Once we're done getting up to the cargo launcher, we have to deal with the Sea Spider. The Sea Spider is a coral-based weapons platform that has a cannon at the top, alongside many mini turrets located all around it. The Sea Spider is one of the bosses that is deceptively challenging, but not because it can deal high amounts of damage. It is that the small turrets can apply chip damage to you while you're using the Pulse Blade. This means you're trading HP if you ever decide to animation lock yourself into blading the spider. Once we get the spider down low enough, it lifts off into the air. With the spider in the air, its attacks changes to mostly hitting low ground and is easily avoidable if we just ascend vertically. Destroying the spider, we move on to Chapter 3. With Chapter 3 starting, the PCA become more involved within the story. This is where a difficulty spike occurs. Most PCA MTs aren't a problem, but it starts with any type of LC. In particular, the LC in the first mission of Chapter 3 has a lot of things that I think Loader4 struggles with. It's armed with a heavy, high damage rifle, has a shield that negates most of your range damage, is extremely mobile while being able to stay in the air infinitely, and to top it all off, is able to fire missiles whenever it dodges away from you. This is where we will first have to heavily utilize the charged Pulse Blade stagger mechanic. Once the LC is destroyed, the PCA battleship itself is pretty simple and easy to deal with. After the PCA introduces themselves, Rusty has a mission for us to attack a refueling base. After destroying the energy plant inside of the base, we have to deal with a pair of PCA SP machines, the Eggromoys. One Eggromoy here is armed with a laser blade and a machine gun, while the other is armed with shoulder missiles and a plasma rifle. The Eggromoy with the laser blade poses the most threat to you as it does very high amounts of damage and can impale you on its blade. However, it mostly travels straight whenever it tries to attack you, so with some practice, it isn't too hard. The other Eggromoy can deal huge amounts of damage to you if you don't pay attention to the audio cues presented by its plasma rifle when it is going to fire. Sitting inside of the plasma rifle's detonation sphere can easily take away half of your AP at any given time, but luckily, that is the only threat it really poses. With both Eggromoys down, we move on to the next. The next PCA craft that seems to be tough for Loader4 is the Cataphract, a heavy armored unit with a variety of weapons much like Balteus, while being so heavily armored like the Juggernaut in the Cleaner that you must specifically hit a weak point on it just to deal damage. The Cataphract, though, is very fast in comparison to the other three, oftentimes darting really far away from the player while having its weak point facing the other way. Because of this, the Cataphract fight can vary from really simple to really complicated, due to the fact that Loader4 can't actively catch up to the insane speeds the Cataphract goes up to. The downside to having these advantages is that the Cataphract is easily staggered by anything, and has no armor at its weak point, ensuring that even the Turner won't ricochet at further ranges when it should. Fighting the Cataphract is just about waiting for the core MT to approach you, as chasing it down is usually a death sentence. You can also always land the opening blow on the Cataphract by using this little rock here, as it always stops in front of it, making the fight last just a little bit shorter in your favor. The next mission is another difficult one with the PCA. Arquebus tells you to attack the old spaceport and destroy all the berthed warships. After clearing out all the ships at the spaceport, Rusty joins us for a 2v2 against a PCA HC and an LC. This fight is actually an upgrade from the Eggromoy fight, as the HC is armed with a much stronger laser blade and pulse guns, while the LC is the shield LC from the first mission of Chapter 3. The HC is really fast, and unlike the Eggromoy, its attacks track very well. It also comes with a shield, which again makes all of your range damage effectively useless. This is another fight where we must heavily utilize the charged version of the Pulse Blade so we can attack without getting punished back. As for the LC, it is an upgraded version of the LC from earlier, having shoulder extensions that give it more boost speed as well as more missiles. As this is just an upgrade to the previous one, it really only enhances its offensive capabilities, which means we can use the same method as before to destroy this one. After the Ice Worm has shown itself, we encounter the first real AC fight of the game, Raven. Raven's AC frame is the same as ours, using R&D's scavenger frame but with a different headpiece. The AC is equipped with a Scudder, a PAL bunker, a 3-cell dual missile launcher, and songbirds. While the frame itself isn't a problem, Raven input reads whatever you do and counters based on that. If you attempt to blade, you get assault armor or PAL bunker. If you get staggered, you get PAL bunkered. Anytime you get PAL bunkered, you will almost always get one shot. Because Raven input reads the player, you have to make sure you bait out the assault armor first. Even if you bait out the assault armor, you can't opt to play offensively against Raven, as you will still get matched with a PAL bunker which can end up killing you. Instead, you have to make Raven assault boost after you. While assault boosting, Raven does not counter you as hard, which makes your attacks far safer to use. Because of the fact that you can just outright lose the fight on a stagger, this is one of the few fights that Loader4 will inherently struggle with and forces you to have to manage your energy, stagger bar, and play at range. After struggling through all that is Chapter 3, we fight the Ice Worm. We will not be using the Sun Needle, as we won't be accessing assembly for this run. The Ice Worm's fight is very predictable, as it is scripted to always spawn where the player is looking. If you know the tells, it is hard for the worm to smash into you. The shielding isn't really a problem either, as shields 1 and 2 can be dealt with using the Pulse Blade and the Turner. Shield 3, however, is a little bit different. Because the head is constantly radiating coral, which deals high amounts of DPS, you have to stay at range and only use the missiles and the Turner. Even with that fact, the worm is still very doable and is a good break from all the intense fighting you have to do during Chapter 3. Progressing on to Chapter 4, the first problem comes in on the second mission. The PCA prototype machine, the Enforcer. A giant machine that has two modes, a reverse joint and a bipedal. This machine actually functions a lot like an AC. having extremely high AP, high attitude stability, being able to quick boost around rapidly, and having multiple weapons. This makes the Enforcer really agile and durable, making it one of the first stat check type bosses in the game. While it is already very hard to deal damage, the damage it deals back at you isn't something to laugh at. Having an extremely nasty pulse gun that has no cooldown, missiles that hit hard like a truck, and a laser cannon that deals damage in the thousands, the Enforcer was my first real wall when attempting this challenge, and almost made me give up the attempt entirely. With enough practice though, it is about abusing the very small windows you have to attack it and exploiting the fact that it doesn't really connect its hits very well when you are near it. Once the Enforcer is destroyed, we have to intercept the redguns. While most would feel this mission is hard, it actually is pretty easy. Breaking it down, we have to fight 5 waves of Balaam MTs, and within these waves contain 2 tetrapods. On the 4th wave, Michigan joins in to assist the MTs. The MTs are pretty simple. 5 Turner shots to destroy one, or a missile pod and 1 Turner shot. As for the attack helicopters, 1 turnaround or multi-lock missiles will do. Past the first wave, some of the waves contain a transport helicopter carrying 4 MTs. It is more ammo efficient to destroy the helicopter than it is to destroy 4 single MTs, so the idea is to always keep an eye out. The MTs that are carried on the smaller transports don't seem to be destroyed if the transport is destroyed first, so it is better in general to just destroy the MTs directly. The tetrapod is also pretty simple. We build up its stagger and then pulse blade when it is overloaded for the most damage. Michigan himself is also really simple. His main sources of damage are his songbirds and his split missiles, both of which require just a bit of maneuvering to get out of. His Gatling gun is inaccurate as he is hard locked onto you, and the explosive thrower he has is useless as long as you don't attempt to blade him too often. This mission is 100% doable, and the difficulty is only exaggerated if you spray and pray rather than precisely kill things as they come to you. With Michigan dead, we continue forward and encounter Rusty. There isn't much to be said, as Rusty's fight is actually similar to Raven's without the assault armor. Anytime you're staggered, Rusty will laser slicer you, and it is enough to outright kill you at high amounts of AP. For this fight, we use the same strategy as we do for Raven. While slightly easier, you still need to manage it as much as you do the fight with Raven. Once Rusty gets away, we move on to the Coral Convergence. The first portion here involves a 2v1 fight with Maeterlinck and Wu Huahai. This fight is actually pretty hard, as Maeterlinck's plasma cannon can easily melt your AP much like the plasma Ectromoy. Not only that, but both ACs here contain shields, which means the damage you deal is significantly reduced. As Maeterlinck deals majority of the damage here, focusing her first is very important. After she is dead, most of the damage is gone, and Wu Huahai's only real threat is his assault armor. After the 2 of them are dealt with, we encounter a boss that can cause frustration to many players, the Ibis series Cell 240. Cell 240 is really easy and poses no threat to Loader4. Like Balteus, if you know the moveset, Cell 240 is readable like a book. All you really have to do is wait for Cell 240 to be animation locked before attempting to attack it. Cell 240's entire shtick is that if the player is aggressive, it makes the fight harder, as anytime it attempts to dodge, it creates these laser drones that just chip away at you. Furthermore, the dodges are so fast that most weapons in the game are unable to keep up with its speed. Maintaining a fixed distance is also important, as Cell 240 doesn't like it when you enter in 150 meters or exit out of 200 meters. Entering into 150 causes it to dodge away from you, which again spawns more drones, while also enabling it to use that one laser bomb attack. Exiting out of 200 meters causes it to dodge towards you, and fire its triple laser blades at you in point-blank range, giving you absolutely no room to react in time. If you play it patiently, Cell 240 can never do enough damage to kill you, and something as silly as a tank built with melee can even beat Cell 240. Once we destroy Cell 240, Snail blindsides us and then we have to choose sides. For the first ending, we're doing Fires of Raven. Siding with Carla, we proceed to destroy the LC under the control of Archibus. This LC is easier than the Chapter 3 one, as it doesn't contain a shield and has lower stability, getting staggered with just one charged pulse blade. After the LC, we have to destroy a HC instead. This HC is similar to one that I haven't covered yet. Specifically, the one that shows up in the mission Eliminate Enforcement Squads, having a plasma rifle alongside a shield. Because shielded targets are just too durable, we have to fight the HC using the pillars in this room, ducking in and out of cover to use the pulse blade, and using the pillar as a shield when it is on cooldown. With the HC destroyed, we have to deal with Freud. Despite being this far into the game, Freud's AC has nothing noteworthy to it, making his fight very straightforward. He uses a lot of the same AI as Raven, but due to how weak his weapons are, the fight isn't super one-sided and can't just end when you're at a reasonably high AP. After getting rid of Freud, we have to fight Rusty again. Rusty returns with a new AC. Because this is Rusty we're talking about, the same problems come up as his previous fight. If you get staggered, you can instantly die. Luckily, the mission he shows up in gives you infinite energy, and so we can just create a huge amount of distance from him if we're about to be staggered, somewhat making this fight much easier than the one in Unknown Territory Survey. As with the previous time we encountered him, we have to use the strategy we used against Raven to beat him, waiting for him to enter assault boost to land hits on him. Funnily enough, as this is the only stage that gives you infinite energy, you can constantly cancel the pulse blade until you push him into the map border, so you can land easy hits that way. Once we've destroyed Rusty, we approach the final mission of this ending. The final mission involves fighting Air piloting an Ibis, namely Sol 644. This fight has the same mechanics of Cell 240, where if you go within a specific distance, Air freaks out and attempts to create distance from you. Every time she does this, she fires lasers and missiles at you, which just increases the amount of damage you take. Anytime you exit a specific distance, she chases heavily. The approach to fighting Air is the same as Cell 240. You wait for her to do attacks, and then you respond accordingly. For the first 70% or so, Air is passive and does not use as much blade attacks on you, forcing you to have to plunk away at her pulse shield with your ranged weapons. Every time air comes up to you to blade, you can easily avoid it by dodging forward and under. Me, personally, I prefer to QB backwards, and while in the momentum given by the QB, charge up my pulse blade to land a hit in. This is easily repeatable on plenty of her attacks and is a way of trading swords with air. For phase 2, it's pretty much the same. Applying the right timing to QBs will always let you get out of her attacks without any problems, and let you retaliate whenever air attempts to blade you. Pretty simple to do, and one of my most favorite fights in the game. After igniting the fires, we return back to the garage with NG+. And oh boy, is this gonna be so fun. A few missions in, and we already encountered our first problem. The 2v1 with the redguns. The main issue here is that Volta is a monster on his own, and Iguana has too much chip damage. The strategy I used months ago involved poking Volta as much as I can before Iguana came over, then dragging them both over to the tetrapod and hoping the fight would work out in my favor. This turned out to be super inconsistent to pull off, so I had to find a better way to do it. Experimenting a little bit, I came to realize that Volta would very often get stuck by the walls around the map. So, I focused entirely on Iguana instead. First going for him while they're separated and trying to deal as much damage as possible. After Volta joins in, I circle around the map in an attempt to get Volta stuck, which as I mentioned, happens pretty often. With Volta stuck, killing Iguana isn't really a big deal, but we still have to deal with Volta afterwards. With Volta, I came to realize that he's only a heavy hitter if you let it be, and his AC being a tank is one of its inherent downsides. You can destroy Volta's AC purely by using just the Turner and the missiles while occasionally coming down to deal damage during his stagger with the Pulse Blade. With that out of the way, we can finally move on to our next problem. Back onto Chapter 3, the PCA are once again the wall for Loader4. In this mission, Flatwell tells us that we need to destroy a HC as well as 2 LCs to prevent the corpse from salvaging the tech. The HC is the one with the laser blade that you fight with Rusty at the spaceport, and the other 2 LCs are the one with the shield and one without. We're free to choose which one of the 2 we attacked first, but once we do, the other half will join the fight after a set time, making it a race if we want the fight easy. As these HCs and LCs are not new, the strategy to approaching them is the same. Charge Pulse Blade to safely land a hit, and then avoid damage while waiting for cooldown. With those PCA machines down, it's time to do the other half of Chapter 3's decision missions. Eliminate the enforcement squads. The HC in this mission is similar to the one Arquebus acquires at the start of Chapter 5, having a laser rifle instead of plasma, and regular missiles instead of plasma missiles. The shield is roughly the same, having the ability to shield bash the player if the player gets too near. The strategy for this is the same. Hit the HC with a charged pulse blade, then duck and cover during the cooldown, as the shield prevents any weapons from applying impact well enough to get a stagger in. Finally, we're here at the mission that I see a lot of people say are a struggle. Defend the damn complex. The Rubicon Liberation Front has a request for us to destroy two top rankers of the arena, namely King and Chartreuse. King pilots a tetrapod armed with a burst handgun, a linear rifle, a triple laser cannon, as well as the Scutum shield, while Chartreuse pilots a hover tank with extremely heavy weapons, a bazooka, a laser rifle, a diffuse cannon, and a grenade launcher. Raven joins later on, but first we're going to approach the initial fight. King should be the first target of this run. The reason being is that he's easy to kill, and also he can't catch up to us. This will be important later. For King, his AI works in a really simple way. He starts off the mission in hover mode with his Scutum deployed. When the Scutum is fully charged up, he will also begin charging his linear rifle. If you QB, it prompts him to fire the linear rifle at you, making him drop the Scutum shield and leaving it open to damage thereafter. Knowing this fact, we can always avoid the damage from the rifle, while also making him extremely vulnerable to our own damage. After we destroy King, we have to double back as soon as possible towards the spawn point to intercept Raven. This is why killing King is important, as Chartreuse's AC is too slow to catch up to you, giving you ample amount of time to do your 1v1 of Raven. As the fight is the same as the old spaceport variant, there isn't much to say for this portion. Once Raven is dead, we have to now seek out Chartreuse if she hasn't already caught up. With Chartreuse, the fight of her is much easier. Her weapons are all ineffective at far ranges and you can mostly shoot at her to destroy her. Her reload times are also pretty long, so you can very often assault boost in to do a charge blade and get out without taking much return damage. It is much similar to fighting Volta, but her AC has a lot less AP to deal with. After that, we go back to Depth 2. This time, Iguana gets replaced by Cold Call. Cold Call pilots a reverse joint that is armed with missile pods, a laser shotgun, and a laser rifle. The problem with Cold Call is that his AC is just better than most others in the game, and can get distance from the player very easily. Combined with his fast weapons, he can get out of trouble and fire at you safely without fearing for much. The next problem is the room you're supposed to fight him in. It gives him the advantage of how it is designed, and so we're instead going to solve that by fighting him inside of the tunnel. Even while fighting him in the tunnel, the DPS race with him is pretty hard as he doesn't only have hard-hitting weapons, but assault armor. The only way to beat him at the DPS race is to use hit-and-run tactics, similar to the HC fights. We use each endpoints of the tunnel to get into cover, assault boost out, and hit Cold Call as he's approaching, and then repeat until he's finally dead. We're back with Rusty once again! This time, however, the problem isn't so much Rusty, as we've already figured out what to do. What is the problem now is that Flatwell decides to do a 2v1 with us, and Flatwell is really good at applying impact. The solution to this is to try and hit Flatwell as he enters the fighting arena and get rid of him before he can influence the fight too much. As usual, this fight typically ends once you get staggered, as Rusty will kill you with the laser slicer at high amounts of AP. After Rusty, we choose sides and go with Bayer against Carla and Chatty. Carla's AC is just 4 missile launchers, with her handheld launchers having a slight delay before they start going after the intended target. Killing Carla first is very important, as Chatty doesn't have the range to actually hit you while he's circling around on the top. The strategy of Carla is really simple. Much like Volta and Chartreuse, the idea is just to outmaneuver the missiles when they get launched, and then go into Blade when she's reloading. There isn't much else besides that, as there isn't any sort of tricks that she can use to just outright kill you. Patty is a bit different. He has the lightweight tank legs, which makes him really fast, so blading him is a little bit hard. We use the same strategy and slowly chip away until we can blade him, either by stagger or by running him into a wall. His weapons are all explosive based and don't track very well like the other 2 tank users, so once again, we have to approach this fight at a distance. With Carla and Chatty dead, we are tasked with destroying the drive block. At the end of this mission, we encounter Snail inside of Balteus. Teus as a fight is pretty much like the Enforcer, being a stack check type boss that has the most inflated things about him in the fight. His pulse shield has no cooldown and can come up instantly as soon as his stagger bar turns from red to neutral, making him one of the longest fights for Loader4. To top it all off, Teus has extremely high laser and explosive resistances, unlike the original Balteus, which means 2 of our weapons are much less effective than before at applying damage while the shield is down. Unlike Balteus, Teus is extremely fast and moves around a lot, hardly giving you a chance to actually land hits. Furthermore, all of the damage dealt from Teus is extremely high and must be avoided or it throws an attempt. This is another fight in the run where I pretty much thought it was impossible to get through due to the shield just coming back up too fast and running out of ammunition. Even with enough practice, this fight's only saving grace is that you get to hear Snail scream in agony, but the fight itself just isn't satisfying to do. Moving on from that infuriating fight, we reach the end and have to fight Walter. Walter pilots an Ibis series AC, HAL 826. All of the weapons, as usual, are coral based, having a rifle that is able to fire a gigantic beam after charging, a blade that can produce a giant sword when charged, a missile that launches smaller projectiles at you while flying towards you, and finally, a shield that fully encases the AC in a coral bubble. Walter's entire fight is based on input reading, which means there is a bit of a problem. His coral blade has really stupid high amounts of tracking and can hit you even on a lightweight build, while his manual aim with his rifle has extremely high turn rate, also making it difficult to avoid as a lightweight. Luckily, as Walter uses roughly the same AI as Raven, he tends to counterattack you when you're using the pulse blade, but because his oscillator is so slow, the pulse blade wins even when we're talking about the charged blade. Due to this, Walter as a fight isn't too hard if you try to be aggressive as much as possible. Liberating Rubicon finally brings us to the next hellish mission that I took a total of 24 hours to finally beat. Escort the Strider. This mission feels like it was made just to drive players insane, particularly players who refuse to experiment and swap weapons around to explosives, as all the enemies here are weak to them. Even the dialogue feels like it was made just for hilarity. The mission consists of the player attempting to defend the Strider, only for the mission to turn completely wrong as the player arrives on scene. The Strider is destroyed by 2 sea weapon drones that travel around on tank legs. These drones come equipped with a kinetic rifle, dual spread missile pods on its shoulder, and a grenade launcher. The missiles and the grenade launcher deal an extremely high amount of damage, and so avoiding them is extremely crucial, while the kinetic rifle can be ignored. On top of the disgusting damage these drones do, they accelerate and move around at speeds that Loader4 is unable to keep up with efficiently. The weapons and speed aside, as I mentioned earlier, all enemies on this stage are weak to explosives, but are ridiculously strong against kinetic and lasers, which means that the Turner and the Pulse Blade don't do enough to make this fight trivial. After destroying the initial 2 drones, 4 Helianthus wheels then come rolling in. Grinder wheels that are armed with endless amount of missiles and a flamethrower for whatever reason. As with the drones, these things are too fast and too armored for us to catch up to, so we need to use missiles primarily. After a set time, 2 more sea drones show up, and then later on, 2 more Helianthus wheels, totaling to 10 enemies, all of which have extremely ridiculous armor, have extremely strong weapons that can track well, and energy management is a total hell, as the wheels can grind you to junk on contact. After countless hours, I found that the initial 2 drones that drop from the Strider are made to slow travel towards you and start fighting you when you enter a set range, roughly around 150 to 200 meters. If you happen to already be within this range, the 2 drones will slow travel towards you still, but only engage you in combat when they have come to a complete stop. This is the only point in time where we are free enough to shoot these things with the Turner, slowly but carefully, as we must also make sure that these things do not ever come to a complete stop, or else they'll start shooting at us. They can't bump into anything or get staggered. The next portion with the wheels was a complete struggle and made me give up on this months ago. But after continuing to experiment, I found that they have to obey the map borders as much as the player does. This allows you to line up the wheels all into one spot and make them shift their attacking angles so that instead of being circled by all of them, they're mostly now within the same directions. Even after learning this, I still struggled a lot and couldn't reliably save ammunition enough for the final portion. I happened to stumble upon another content creator and saw that they too were struggling, but after a while, somehow managed to land kicks on the wheels, which made me think, wait, if you can kick the wheels, you can definitely use the Turner or the Pulse Blade on them. And so, I decided to go back to experimenting, and this turned out to work in conserving ammunition for the later parts. I had to work on managing how much damage I was taking from the first set of wheels, as the overwhelming amount of missiles constantly staggered me and left me open to just eating damage. I eventually learned to memorize each wheel's attack cycle as they went under me and behind, making the dodging more of a mental game. And after countless of hours practicing and doing attempts, I finally nailed it. Finishing the Strider, we get contacted by real human Kate Markson to prevent the PCA from inspecting the arsenal. As this is a mission concerning the PCA, the entire stage has a bunch of LCs that hit hard. After the first portion, we meet up with Kate and have to fight against 2 Ectromoys and a Cataphract at the same time. While this might seem to be a problem, Kate takes aggro and deals a good amount of damage on her own, so it actually trivializes this fight entirely. After we're done helping Kate, we fast forward to chapter 3, where we investigate the Xylem. At the end, we fight Thumb Dolmayan. Dolmayan's AC comes equipped with a Ransetsu, a Pulse Plate, a handheld missile launcher, and the Napalm Bombs. Dolmayan's AC itself isn't very impressive, but what makes this fight difficult is the terrain. Dolmayan often looks to get away from you and behind all of these buildings while throwing down his napalm. If you do this fight without carefully managing your ACS anomaly, you'll get staggered roughly twice as fast and die a bunch. But besides that, the fight itself has no threat, but just lasts very long. Before we get to the Ice Worm, Allmine contacts us and tells us to destroy helicopters transporting coral. This mission doesn't have anything that can immediately kill us, but mission failure is still present as Loader4 has very bad energy capacity on paper. Despite this, however, with proper management of weapons, destroying the right transports to get 2-for-1 kills, Loader4 can successfully clear the mission with 0 helicopters escaping. Descending into the depths for the last time, the next would-be obstacle is Vesper 3 O'Keefe. This fight has no real threat, but it is annoying having to deal with O'Keefe's tendency to stay in the air all the time. You can easily end this fight by just descending down into the pit and waiting for him to drop down to fight you, but I do it the normal and stupid way. Regardless of the method used, for a Chapter 4 fight, he is really easy. Moving on to the Coral Convergence, after killing the two ACs, All Mine contacts and notifies us that Snail is waiting nearby to ambush us. Instead of fighting Cell 240, we instead fight two more ACs, which, arguably, is harder than just fighting Cell 240. We get out to the location All Mine has given us, and we encounter Snail. Upon damaging Snail down to 50% for the first time, Iguana joins in for another 2v1, much like when you have to fight him and Volta at the same time. This fight is as difficult as the original, if not more, due to the arena's limited size. This forces you straight into a 2v1 that you have no way to manipulate so that you have better odds. The worst part about this fight is the way the AI is coded to target you. Instead of targeting based on the damage dealt, they will both either target you together or fight each other at the same time every few seconds. This means that if you're focusing on any one of the two, the moment the AI swaps the targeting to you, you're now in a 2v1 situation whether you like it or not. The first target to focus on is Iguana, as his AC isn't very durable, and he actually does most of the damage here despite Snail having better weapons. While hitting Iguana, you must very carefully listen out for the sound of Snail's laser lance, as anytime he tags you, you're going to take damage from both sides. The moment you hear the sound, you have to dodge sideways under the assumption that he will just hit you. Once Iguana is dead, Snail should be relatively simple, as his only two hard-hitting weapons are his stun needle launcher and the lance, both of which are easy to get out of if you only have him as your target. Here we are at the end, the final mission of the game, with 3 stages to go through and a boss fight that can at times be infuriating. All Mine reveals that it wants to do coral release, and for that, we must be destroyed. The first stage of this final mission consists of fighting the Mind Gamma AC alongside 4 other lesser minions. The Mind Gamma AC is a reverse joint armed with half of Iguana's weapons, which are his pulse shield and his Ludlow, and half of Kate's, the Karasawa and the laser drone. The other 4 ACs are split into 2 types, a close range with a laser dagger and the Itsujin, and a far range with plasma and dual missiles. The first stage of this fight is pretty simple. Destroy Mind Gamma and you proceed to stage 2. What isn't simple is that Iguana is scripted to stay a fixed distance away from you during this portion, and due to the fact that he's a reverse joint and can input redo, landing hits is an outright chore, and sometimes eats away at your AP more than it is needed. The melee ACs will stagger you with their laser daggers, and the ranged ones oftentimes get in the way and body block you. My suggestion, if you want to do it patiently, is to destroy the melee ACs, and then focus the rest of your time on Iguana, as the ranged ones don't damage you often enough for you to waste resources on them. Once Mind Gamma has been destroyed, we have to fight an Ibis, Soul 644 and 2 spiders. Air joins us on her Echo AC, but she usually sabotages stagger times more than help you with anything. While Iguana is piloting a Soul 644 and has similar attacks to Ayers, the fight differentiates in that Iguana's attack patterns are dictated by what the sea spiders are up to. If they're charging this plasma ball, Iguana hardly comes in to attack you, and when they're about to fire the plasma ball, he backs up and away in the middle of the 2 of them to hide from you. If they fire this straight plasma laser at you, Iguana follows it up afterwards by boosting up to you, slashing, and then transforming into cannon mode to sweep a laser across the arena. If they decide to spin, Iguana will slash at you, then boost far away, transforming into cannon mode to fire a beam straight at you. Because the fight is scripted in this way, the fight can go from very simple and predictable to very complicating and overbearing, as there isn't a fixed rotation to the attacks the sea spiders can do. Upon damaging Iguana to 50%, Stage 2 is completed, and in the same fashion as Stage 1, the sea spiders are destroyed and you enter a 1v1 with Iguana. In this 1v1, Iguana is now super aggressive, and his Soul 644 now gains new melee attacks that are all extremely fast and leave you with a very small window to actually react to. While Loader4 can dodge all attacks in theory, what is the real issue is that getting hit is not very forgiving and can instantly end attempts. Me personally, while I have finished this fight in the past, I struggled to get my muscle memory timing down for the fight as I had gotten too used to using the Alulas in my previous playthrough. And so, I died over 136 times before finally adjusting myself to the fight.
メインシステム戦闘モード起動。
スネイル、合意分岐の目的は C462 レイブ C パルス変異波形エア。あなたたちはリリースのトリガーとして我々に取り込ませていただきます。
オタクはどうでもいい。こいつを消せれば俺はそれが全てだ。野良犬、てめえには何度もやられたな。俺の中にも大勢いるぜ。
ニグアス、この体はもう持たない。
誰を出すのか。
レイブ、ゴール前で何かをしようとしています。私は考えない。 目覚めたのですね、レイブン。
With Iguana destroyed and core release achieved, Loader4 has successfully obtained the certification of Stargazer after landing on Rubicon 3, without using OS tuning. Doing this challenge run was half fun, half not. The obvious parts without fun were the Enforcer, Snail Teus, and ultimately, the Strider. And it is thanks to this person again for showing me how to be gutsy on Loader4 and abusing close range even on the scary grinder wheels. If you've made it this far, thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time.